Hello, and welcome to the Disruptive Innovation Festival. My name is Leo, and the DIF is a 3-week-long online festival of ideas, which aims to shift mindsets and inspire action towards the transition towards a circular economy. In this session here today, Circular Value Creation Architectures, the case of the smartphone industry, research associate Ferdinand Revilio and Professor Eric Hansen will give us a behind-the-scenes look at their research into how companies actually coordinate activities towards adopting circular economy strategies, with a particular focus, of course, you could have guessed from the title, with a particular focus on the smartphone industry. In doing so, we hope to explore in the next 30 minutes or so the following question. Is undertaking circular strategies an endeavor for just one company, that is through building internal capabilities, or is it an effort across multiple stakeholders, and does it require engaging third-party actors? So first of all, Eric, Ferdinand, it's great to have you here at the DIF.
Thank you. We're happy to be here as well.
Just before we get going, I just wanted to remind the online audience, you watching around the world, to do send your comments and questions through to Eric and Ferdinand on the comment section just to the right of this session page, or on the YouTube page, or on Twitter with the hashtag ThinkDiff. We will be looking for these questions, and towards the end of the session, in a Q&A style end to the session, I'll be asking these questions to Eric and Ferdinand. So to kick things off, Eric, with you, tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you developed an interest in circular economy, and what a circular value creation architecture actually is for the audience.
Thank you, Leo, and welcome everybody to this session on circular value creation architectures. I can put it in very simple terms. It is about how economic actors work together to implement circular services for the consumer. And my name is Eric Hansen, as you already know. I'm a professor for integrated quality design at Johannes Kepler University in Linz, in beautiful Austria. And yeah, integrated quality design is a complicated term. Basically, I founded the institute in 2015 with the aim to understand quality holistically. And to me, that means it must be rooted in product lifecycle thinking and circularity. And I take the perspective of product development and R&D management. So why circularity in the first place? This goes back as well to 2015, where I served as a mentor in the Schmidt-MacArthurship Fellowship Program. And in this context, I also went to London for a one-week summer school organized by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. That was a really nice setting. And I met many junior and senior circular economy enthusiasts. And we just had a great time. And I simply couldn't stop thinking about it once I was back. So I'm at the same time a visiting researcher at Leuphana University in Lüneburg in Germany. I'm a visiting researcher there, and in this, before relocating to Austria, I was a professor there as well. And during that time, together with Professor Stefan Schaltegger, we secured funding for a research project on sustainability in the information and communication technology industry. And that was an excellent opportunity to actually look into circularity of smartphones. And this is also where Ferdinand comes into play.
Hey, everyone. Yes, my name is Ferdinand. It's great to be here. I work at the Center for Sustainability Management in Lüneburg, where I also speak from right now. And I coordinate the Innovation Lab on sustainable smartphones. And also, I'm a PhD student at the Institute of Integrated Quality Design in Austria with Eric. And my motivation for circularity came during my master studies, where I studied sustainability science here at Leuphana University. And because I'm an industrial engineer from the background, I was always interested in the technology and the technological aspects. And for me, the circular economy was really fascinating because it combines all the different sustainability strategies through closing, slowing, and narrowing resource loops. Yeah.
Great. It's fantastic to have you both here at the DIF. Welcome. So really to kick things off properly, this session is going to, in the title, it's focusing on the smartphone industry. And I know, Ferdinand, you're going to give us a little bit of an insight here. Why are you focusing? Why have you focused on smartphones and the smartphone industry?
Yeah, thank you very much, Leo. A very good question. Smartphones, I think, are a perfect example for the wastefulness of our linear economy, because manufacturers and suppliers, they first spend a lot of effort and money to refine the materials that go into a smartphone or a mobile device. And actually, more than half of the elements of the periodic table are contained in these devices. And then once they've produced the devices, what do? They sell them, and they give them out of their hands. So eventually, nobody really knows where all the phones are actually all around the world. And in this way, the materials again dissipate all over the globe. Another thing is that smartphones have very short first use cycles of less than 2 years on average. However, their technical functionality would actually allow for a lot longer use phases. And certainly some of these issues or some of the reasons for that are related to the fact that most smartphones are not designed having circularity in mind, and also we have a perceived limited repairability of the smartphones. But also it has to do with the malfunctioning of second-hand markets. So when we think about what actually happens after this first use cycle with our phones, most of the phones, they end up in our personal drawers at home. So think about yourself, how many devices, mobile devices you have at home. It's probably something between 1 to 3 mobile devices. And here it comes then back to us that we see that actually in our circular system, the weakest point is not at the technological processes of, for example, recycling phones, but of having enough volumes coming back into the system and into the right loops. And all of these challenges, they can certainly not be solved by one actor in the value chain alone. And this is why we have developed the Innovation Lab on Sustainable Smartphones in Lüneburg, where we bring together different actors from the entire value chain of a smartphone. So we have resource suppliers, manufacturers, distributors, who are, in the case of the smartphone, mostly telecommunication service providers. But we also have in our lab the repair shop from the corner, but also large refurbishing facilities and recycling facilities. And we, over a period of 3 years, we engaged with these actors and brought them to think about the entire life cycle and jointly develop circular solutions. And it was during the beginning of this living lab that we realized that actually there are already so many actors out there in the industry operating profitable circular business models. And we began to ask ourselves how these actors work and how they interrelate to each other. And yeah, this is how we came to the research project, and Eric will now explain how we approached it.
Thank you, Ferdinand. Well, this question is, I think, the right one, how actors can work together to deliver circular services. And we set out with our research with this framework. And let me focus this a little bit that you can see this better. We set out with this framework, which is built with 2 building blocks. First of all, we have all the circular strategies, which you know from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation: maintenance, repair, reuse, remanufacturing, and recycling. And the second building block, we wanted to know more about the actors and how actors work together. And we looked for economic theories which could help us better understand those relationships. We found the classical make or buy theory. This is this here, or make, ally, or buy decision theory. And that was originally used to better understand this relationship here between manufacturer and suppliers. It is about making decisions on whether the manufacturer produces components or materials themselves, or whether they outsource that to a supplier. take the example of Apple phones. They could become a specialist in display technology, and they could produce the display themselves internally. Or they could say, we outsource that to some supplier in China. A third strategy, the ally strategy, would be to work together with suppliers in the long term by developing partnerships or even by investing in those suppliers. We now took this concept of make or buy between these actors in the supply chain and transferred it into the more downstream circular value creation activities. So we ask our question, does a circular service, is it made internally by a manufacturer or service provider? Or do they work together with other specialized loop operators? That's how we call them. So usually there are different actors here specialized in one of these loops, and this is a possibility to work together with this so-called distributor. And this is important here. We always take the perspective, that's the little glasses here, we take this perspective of the distributor, which could either be a manufacturer or could be a service provider who is usually the one who offers you the phone contract.
Okay, thanks, Eric. I will now show you one example of our innovation lab. We have a manufacturer from Germany called Shift Phones in our lab, and they operate in a make architecture, and they do many things very different. And I want to show you this directly on their newest phone model. So I will turn my camera. This is their newest phone. It looks like a conventional smartphone. But when we look a little bit closer, we already see what they do different to prolong the lifetime in the first place before being able to repair it. They have an integrated bumper in their design. So the bumper is delivered directly with the phone. And also they directly deliver the phone with an protective layer on the glass. Also, we can take out the battery like we are used to in our older phones. This works very simple. And this battery you can buy in original quality in their online shop. Then regarding repair, because once the phone will maybe break, they deliver directly a screwdriver with the phone. And also they support you with self-repairs through online videos and through their support service. I have another phone over here where I've already taken out the screws that you need to take out. They have all the same size, so you don't get confused. And then once we have taken out the screws, we can now simply take off the display as well. And this display you can also buy in their online shop in the same quality. And it's just a few clicks away. Then on the level of the main board, they follow a different strategy. Here you can probably, as an average user, not repair more yourself. But that's why they have an in-house repair service where Shift technicians directly repair your phone. So they have designed it, so they also know how to repair it best. But you can do some upgrades yourself. I want to show this. For example, the camera, the front camera, we can take out because it's just connected with a connector and it's not soldered to the board. This also applies to the other camera and to some other parts. Also, we can exchange the entire main board for a new upgrade. They will bring out a new model soon, and then you can just have another main board and keep the rest of the phone. Of course, they also do things to actually bring the phone back into the system. So what I just said before with the second-hand markets, they operate their own second-hand market, so you can sell back the phone to them and they will sell used phones to their own customers. And also they have something very innovative. They have developed a deposit certificate. So you will always get back 22 euros as a minimum, even when your phone is completely damaged. So this is an example of a vertically integrated architecture. And Eric will now explain you how this fits in with other actors operating in the smartphone industry.
Thanks, Ferdinand. This architecture of vertical integration is intriguing to some extent, but I also think that not every manufacturer or service provider wants to invest so much and put all their eggs in one basket, right? So that's why we set out in our research and looked also at other architectures, and we found overall 4 architectures. And I give you some better insight into these. So that was the vertically integrated architecture. You see here with blue that they cover all the loops in the circular economy. And the second architecture which we found is the network-based architecture based on the allies decision. So in this strategy, the distributor works together with loop operators to offer circular services. In our case, we looked at a large German telecom service provider, and they, for example, invested here into a startup of the repair business, and that startup is able to come to your door and repair your phone on site. That's one partner they have, but they partnered with several other actors in other loops as well. So they partner with one actor who covers both remanufacturing and recycling. They invested in that one as well, so it has become a strategic partnership. And together they are able to offer these services, recycling and refurbishing, actually. Then let's move to the third architecture. This is a little bit more simple. It's called the outsourced loop operations based on the buy decision. And here we looked at also a telecom service provider in Germany, and they had a little more simple approach. You could say that they are not a circular economy enthusiast, but they invested in limited activities. Here they looked at how to improve the recycling loop, and it is a legal requirement for them to take care of phone recycling. But they upgraded that a little bit by working together with one supplier in the market, a charity collector, where they could bring their phone to a social business where disabled people are integrated in disassembling their phones. And the advantage for the distributor is that they can enrich their marketing with a social cause. A fourth architecture we have is what we called autonomous loop operations. And this goes beyond the traditional make or buy theory, but we thought it wouldn't be complete if we not include it. The autonomous loop operations is, you can see here, there's no blue color in this chart. And the difference is that the loop operators serving certain services in these loops, they don't have a relationship with the distributor. They emerged basically because the circular services in the market were dysfunctional, non-existing, or simply too expensive. We looked, for example, at Akkutauschen.de. This is a small company in Germany which is specialized in repair activities, particularly on the replacement of batteries. So we can see here the different patterns where we have the vertical integration, where everybody does, one company does everything themselves. They partner here as well. And here there is a missing relationship.
Okay, thank you, Eric. So Eric just introduced us to the different architectures. I now want to give some more characteristics and show you how they relate to each other. And therefore, I will again turn my camera. And what you see here now is our typology of circular value creation architectures that we have developed based on these 4 different architectures, which we can map along the continuum of make or buy, with an extension, as Eric just mentioned, for uncoordinated loop activities. So on this side, regarding the vertically integrated architecture, we have a make coordination where the distributor develops core competencies in circularity and also uses circularity as a source of innovation. So what we observed is that they see circularity very holistically and work towards developing closed loop systems. So they look at all different loops. And for example, regarding the second-hand market, they have a high degree of loop closure for the reuse loop as well. So they sell their used phones to their own customer base instead of selling used phones to a different customer base, for example, in Asia. And this closed loop system has then also implications for the product design, because now the distributor or the manufacturer, they have an incentive to engage in circular product design to optimize their product and their processes. So at the end, they work towards developing product service systems and have a lead the industry approach, one can say. On the other hand, we have autonomous architectures where distributors ignore the need for circularity and rather follow a laissez-faire approach to circularity. So they might have some activities, but they are too expensive or they don't advertise them. And in this case, other actors fill the niche. And these autonomous actors are in our case of the smartphone industry, for example, the repair shop from around the corner that you know, where you can get your phone repaired very easily. But also there are large remanufacturing companies operating internationally. And these autonomous actors, they now don't have a holistic approach to circularity, but they operate single loops, whichever loop they find most profitable. So we don't have a closed loop system here. However, autonomous actors they are also very innovative because they have no contact to the distributor or to the manufacturer. So they have to solve this themselves. So they develop innovative approaches to circularity. For example, most repair operators who work autonomously, they use the approach of harvesting spare parts. So they use spare parts taken out from broken phones to then repair phones which are not that broken. Overall, we can say that in this case, the distributor takes a reactive approach to circularity, and then autonomous actors emerge. So in our research, we found that distributors who follow a make architecture, they see circularity as a strategic endeavor. And they have developed business models that allow them to capture circular value, and they're thus motivated to drive circularity internally. Whereas on the other side, we have distributors who ignore circularity or follow a laissez-faire approach. And here we then see that they rather follow a linear business logic, business as usual, and then they leave a gap where other actors emerge. And more specifically, these actors are autonomous loop operators.
Thank you, Ferdinand. Overall, coming to the end of our presentation, we think that this typology helps us to better understand the different economic actors in the system and how they interact and how they together or sometimes not together provide circular services. And we can also see that this typology helps managers as a decision-making tool on their journey towards circularity, whether they really want to go lead the industry approach and invest a lot internally, or whether they want to be more resource-saving with the approach of collaboration with other existing partners, for example. So we looked at this and we developed this typology in the context empirically, in the empirical context of smartphones and ICT industry, but we are quite sure that this is also more general and applies to many different other industries. So thank you very much, and I'll give back to Leo.
Great. Thank you guys for that run through of your research, focusing in on the smartphone industry and on the Shift phone. And we've got some questions from the online audience that are kind of a range of questions, some focusing on wanting to ask questions about the shift phone, some relevant to the smartphone industry. But on that topic, on that point, Eric, about this applicability of this typology and on this model that you've developed in other industries, could you perhaps elaborate that a little bit more? Have you looked into how this can be applied into industries beyond smartphones?
Sure. We also have a research project where we cover other industries, which is related to the plastic sector, for example, packaging in the cleaning industry, and we have very strong industry actors here from the plastic economy locally here in Linz in Austria. Mm-hmm. And what we see, for example, is that just recently, one of the biggest chemical or polymer company producing virgin polymers for the plastic industry, it's called Borealis. They have invested heavily in recycling plants in Germany and in Austria. So they have become now a more balanced company covering both virgin production of polymers and recycling polymers. And that shows a vertical integration strategy in the plastics industry. And comparably, you can find a more networked or ally approach in this industry as well. For example, in that company where we look at, it's called Werner and Merz, and they have the Frosch brand, a popular detergent and washing detergent in the German-speaking area. And they have collaborated with different actors across sectors. So with the plastic bottle producer, with the public collection system in Germany, where they collect the plastic waste, and they all sit together on one table, and they together with a machine builder for recycling machines, they have built an entirely new system, more innovative system to get transparent PET material from the mixed waste streams, which is world new in a way. And they achieved that via intensive collaboration. And they also invited other competitors actually to join that initiative. So that's a more collaborative approach. So that's an example how you can see that in other industries as well.
Mm. Sure. And remaining on that, the topic of referring to the typology itself. So we've seen the shift phone as an example of vertically integrated loop operations. And you briefly mentioned Apple earlier. Where would the smartphone industry fit into these loop operations at the moment in its current form?
So just to wrap up, so you mean how Apple fits into our typology?
Yeah, because clearly they're not a vertically integrated example in the smartphone industry, or am I wrong in that? Where would they fit into the fore?
So we haven't spoken to any Apple representative directly, because we simply didn't have contact. So if there's anyone out there who can connect us, we are more than happy. But from the secondary material that I looked at, I think I will turn the camera again to show this. I think Apple is somewhere between the vertically integrated and the network-based. Because when we look at what they want to do, they have a very strong circular strategy. And they, for example, have developed the recycling robot Liam. And this would really fit into this vertical integration. But also they work together with companies that take back the phones for them and refurbish them for them. However, the case is that I think Apple, maybe they come up with something big soon, but so far all of these circular activities are rather small. So we can buy refurbished products on their website, but not that many, and their repair activities are very expensive. Yeah.
We should mention there additionally that Apple took recently that move to develop recycling technology recycling robots, like they call them Liam and Daisy, the second version. And that's a move. I mean, that's not fully commercialized yet, but it's a rather pilot phase. But if they go further down that road, it's a very strong signal for vertical integration that they, as a smartphone manufacturer, actually take over internal recycling activities. That is actually world new in a way, if they would really implement it, because usually we considered recycling activities as so specific in a way that only specialized operators could do that. So now we have Apple developing new competencies in the recycling business, and they claim that they would be actually better than the existing recycling industry in getting out more precious metals from their phones, because they know the phone design, and so they are better able to decompose and disassemble it and recover the material. So there's interesting developments, and it will be really interesting to see whether they further go down that road.
Great. So it looks like there's already momentum within these big actors within the smartphone industry to integrate circular strategies within their general strategies. And this isn't just an example. Say the Shift phone isn't just a singular example of one company doing this, but actually the big actors are actually undertaking these strategies, which is highly encouraging to hear. Which I assumed wasn't going to be the case, but it is encouraging to hear. And at the beginning of the session, one of you mentioned that phones have a pretty high proportion of the periodic table elements in there. What was that fraction? Can you remind me?
It's probably something between. It's probably more than half of the metals at least. So most of the metals are included in the smartphones. Also in the screen, we have many of the rare earth elements. Mm-hmm. So it's more than half of the elements of the periodic table, like except the radioactive elements. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this just highlights the need for companies themselves, because they understand what elements and what materials are involved in their phone, to develop these strategies. And would you say that that vertical integration, having companies have that embedded within their strategies as the biggest value retention option?
No, certainly not. We have to move away from this recycling view, because actually a lot of value is in the phone, also in the single components. So what Shift, for example, is doing when they take back the phones, they take apart the phone and they use the parts which are not broken as spare parts in future. And these parts are actually very, very valuable as well. Also, we see this development in the screens. The screens are the most expensive part also of a phone, and there are ways that you can refurbish a screen when the glass is broken. So most of the times only the glass is broken, and then you can take off this broken glass and put on a new glass, and all the rare earth elements in the display, in the LCD itself, they can be reused, so to say. So it's really also about the components of a product that we need to look at.
And the Shift phone, there's also another example, Fairphone, which a commenter on the session page identified as a product that is designed for durability, disassembly, ease of repair. I know you mentioned that Shift phone have a repairability guide, and that buyback scheme that you mentioned Shift phone has on 22 euros if you give it back to the supplier. Now there is a question regarding that on the session.
Can I start with this question maybe?
Sure.
And then give over to Ferdinand. So that's an interesting question, which we ask ourselves as well. The comparison between those two emergent actors operating in the niche, and then obviously taking a different approach than the a more radical approach than the established large-scale actors. And on the surface, I think they are rather similar in a way that they are vertically integrated. They want to push the boundaries with regard to repair and modularity as well. Also make the split of the repair in parts where you can do the repair yourself as the user, and parts is being done internally. So there's a similarity, but there's also a difference, I would say. So first of all, I think the shift phone people, they are probably a bit more oriented towards usability and technology design in a way. So if you can, as you can see from the design, it looks a bit more like Apple phones. And they take a bit more focus on performance of the phones, etc. And that's also where we can see then that they go one step further, because as they see that technology also has to work for the user and has to be fast to make fun, I think they also went one step further with regard to the upgradability, because they offer, knowing that users may want faster replacements for faster devices, they incorporated already some functionality that you could even upgrade the main board, and maybe Ferdinand can reflect further on that.
Yeah, I think they follow a little different approach of modularity. Shift, of course, first of all, I think the most obvious example is that you need a screwdriver to take out most of the elements, actually all the elements, and you have to take out many screws. And I think Shift wants to have the users also know what their phone looks like and how it works. And on the level of the main board, what they do is that they don't have this Lego approach of modularity, but they have this two-level modularity. So some things you can do as a user yourself, and then on a second level, they have really optimized on the chip level. They have optimized the design that they can repair it also faster and easier. So this includes not soldering most of the parts, but having connectors, and also that you can take out the entire main board and replace it with a new one. Yeah.
That of course gives more opportunity. Yeah. More opportunity as well to offer services for upgrading, etc. Whether that, I mean, these devices are still new in the market, so we also still have to see whether that in practice that will be really feasible in practice, and whether users actually take that opportunity to upgrade such a device with such a serious step as to replace the main board. So I think there's lots to see also with user practices.
Sure. So how I'm aware of the time at the moment. We may have to wrap things up shortly, but still on the point about the Fairphone. How can people watching this now find out more about it? How can they find out information about whether or not they can, they can make the switch from traditional smartphones over to Fairphone, perhaps information on cost? Where can the audience go to find out more?
Well, they can basically turn to the websites of those new producers, such as Fairphone and Shift Phones. They have their websites, and you can make your studies and comparisons. And I think that's the way to go.
Simple. Didn't realize that they had their own websites, but easy enough. Brilliant. We have one question, one short question regarding the Fairphone, regarding the Shift Phone rather, and the comparison between the two. And I would really like viewers to find out more about those comparisons. But one person asks, how is Shift different from Fairphone in that Fairphone places a lot of its concern in the sourcing of its raw materials. So, well, of its raw and or recycled materials. Is that something Shift is doing as well? Are they integrating recycled components that couldn't be remanufactured or repaired back into the production of new models?
So I will quickly go on this. So as I said, they use you can use the different components, and they take the components out and use them for their repairs on this level. Also, they try to be really careful of the materials they are using. However, we must see that they are a really small family-owned company, actually, from Germany. And I think their abilities are limited on the materials level. But what they, however, do is that they bring this vertical approach actually to another level, and they have their own production facility. So this is for the end assembly now. In the beginning, they did work together with an assembler in China. And then they realized, well, we actually want to do so many things different, and we cannot change this large assembler. So let's just start our own assembly line. So on the level of the components and the parts and the assembly, yes, they do a lot there.
Great, thank you for elaborating on that point. So I feel like those that want to find out more about Shift Phone do go onto their website and find out more. But of course, that is an example, and the smartphone industry is an example of the research that you've both been carrying out around the different value creation architectures around circular strategy, whether or not it's something embedded within the strategy or something that is outsourced and is laissez-faire, as you put it, and the comparison between those two, or those four options, rather, those four types. I'm interested to find out, as one of the last questions, where can people find out more about that research? Is there a paper that's been recently published? Is there information online so that, you know, individuals in business and stakeholders who are thinking about adopting circularity, that they can use that as a reference point?
Sure. Well, our research hasn't been finished. It's ongoing, but we have those preliminary results, which we also showed today. They are public, so you can find more on this research. You can find basically a technical working paper with this framework and with all the details of these different coordination modes. You can find it on our websites, personal websites, but you can also find it as usually in the ResearchGate platform, where there's an own site for this publication, and where you can also receive updates. This research is currently in the review process of a good journal, and once we have the final publication out, that will be probably next year, we will also update these profiles in ResearchGate, etc.
Great. For the time being, I think perhaps we can organise getting the links and embedding them onto
Sure.
the session page so people can find them easily. I know that I'm going to be checking them out after today.
Sure.
Well, great. Thank you very much, Eric and Ferdinand, for joining us at the DIF today. And thank you to the online audience for posting your questions on the session page. I hope you two have enjoyed this experience.
Very much.
Great. And 45 minutes in, it looks like we're going to have to wrap things up. If you do still have comments and questions, do post them onto the session page or on Twitter using the hashtag ThinkDiff, and we'll myself, Eric, and Ferdinand will try our best to get answers to you. So that may be it for now. Actually, before we go, it would be quite nice to get I feel like we've covered quite a lot in this session, whether it's the Shift Phone, the smartphone industry, your circular value creation architectures research that's going to be released next year. If you could provide perhaps one of you, this is maybe quite a big ask, but if you could provide a short summary, the key takeaways for the audience here today, that would be much obliged.
Sure, Leo. Well, just taking the recent discussion, taking that over here to the final implications, which I would like to share. It was interesting that we discussed a lot about product design, and then those by Fairphone and Shift and Apple, etc. While our research is rather on the economic level of those architectures, value creation architectures, but it makes sense to discuss about the product design because it's inherently linked. So with a different product design, you can create different value creation architectures. Of course, a modular design, you can provide far more services, etc. So there's a big link, and I think that's a takeaway for also companies who want to pursue the circular economy, that if they want to go forward, they need to find links as well where they can link their experiences with circularity, with circular services back into their product redesign. So that's an important thing to take away. A second one is that actually fast use cycles by consumers. I mean, we are criticizing ourselves that we want phones ever quicker and clothes ever quicker, but it doesn't necessarily mean that some special individual uses a phone very short time, that the product lifetime of the smartphone is short. It's not equal. So if the companies, as we've seen here, develop very ambitious circular strategies in the place of repair, remanufacturing, reuse, then it could be in the short life at one consumer side, could be still a long life when we include the additional consumers who might use the same phone. So that's the second takeaway. A third one, but we have to study that more carefully, of course. But yeah, there's no automatic relationship. A final one would be that the emergence, the non-action, if none of these distributors in the market offer functioning services of circularity, then we will see in any industry, we will see the emergence of these autonomous actors. And ultimately, the opportunities for new business is left over to these autonomous actors. And distributors might face trouble in the future because they lose contact to the customers, and they leave profits as well and other opportunities to those newly emerging actors. And so the role of the autonomous actor is a very important one. They are part of the thriving circular system, and they introduce innovation, and they are often also targets for acquisition by established actors. So these are the three takeaways.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And on that last point, I think perhaps a good example of an autonomous actor in the smartphone industry could be Mazuma Mobile. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but here in the UK and I think in the US as well, they've over a decade ago, they identified that economic opportunity of, okay, there's a lot of smartphones that people do have in their drawers. I know, Ferdinand, you mentioned that earlier. How can we then, reintroduce that back into the value chain, either as raw material through recycling, either by remanufacturing it and putting it back to the parts manufacturer, or just a bit of repair and or refurbishment that can then give it a second life, as it were.
Yeah, it's a very good example. Yeah, that's
great. Cool. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for providing an insight into how the smartphone industry is how your typology and your circular value creation architectures are particularly relevant to the smartphone industry and smartphones as kind of kingpins of the linear economy up to this point. But there's obviously some momentum there that we've discussed here today. Great. Well, while it may be the end of this session with Eric and Ferdinand, there's loads more to come at thinkdiff.co. We're only 2 days or 3 days into the DIF 2018, and we've got around 100 more pieces of content for you up in the schedule at thinkdiff.co. ranging from on-air sessions like this to live studio sessions just on the floor above me, and pre-recorded podcasts and films. This morning is a good example of a podcast I really enjoyed, Safe and Circular by Design, Making Positive Materials Choices, where experts of Cradle to Cradle, Product Innovation Institute, and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation discussed what every designer needs to know about the safety of materials of circular product design, slightly relevant to the smartphone industry that we've discussed here today. And of course, you can catch up with anything that has been going on the last couple of days at thinkdif.co. And if you're interested to find out more about the Shift phone, about the research that Eric and Ferdinand are doing in this space of circular value creation architectures, then we'll be providing links in the session page just below. So that's all we have time for today. Check out the DIF schedule for sessions to come and previous sessions, and you can see what piques your fancy there. But until next time, goodbye, folks.
Thank you very much for having us.
Goodbye.